Hello, 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 those of you out there in the universe of LinkedIn, Facebook, X, where else are we? Oh, YouTube. How could we forget YouTube? Um, my name's Ryan Erickson. This is called, I like to call this a conversation jam. I'm a jazz bass player. One of our participants today is also a jazz bass player, which I did not know. So the deal here is we have a theme, we have a tune that we're going to play together. Essentially, I'll be here to support our two guests today in whatever wants to happen. We will do some improv. Maybe we'll stay with the theme of no such thing as an agile coach. You may be watching for that. And, whatever happens is the only thing that could have happened, as we say in open space. I am going to unmute my two new friends here. Actually, one I'm meeting today for the first time, Huy Nguyen, and the inimitable Marcelo Lopez, also here on the jam today. And let's bring the music down for a moment and take a breath. And maybe who wants to say hello to the universe there first?
Hello, universe. Good to be here. Good to be with all of you. And I think we're gonna have a lot of fun in this dialogue today. Some insightful things I've been building up for a long time, and I think it's ready to be maybe burst a little bit in a way.
Mm-hmm. Like a fresh orange ready to be squeezed and juiced.
That's right.
That was one heck of a video. And hello to the rest of the universe.
Indeed. Greetings to you, good now. And so the theme of today, Marcelo, you've talked about this a few times. I've seen you riff on this, and I know you feel deeply about it. No such thing as an agile coach. And Huy, I saw you kind of challenging that a little bit recently, and I would like to see maybe, Huy, I will ask you to go first and put out what your question is for Marcel. Where's your curiosity? And let's go from there.
I would argue if it was a challenge against no such thing. We've been dialoguing on this topic. I think we need to explain what it is, right, Marcelo? We have been actually dialoguing and riffing on this for quite some time. I think we need to start there, Mo. Let's set the context a little bit here.
So we'll put Marcelo in focus, and then Marcelo, you want to explain the hashtag for those who may not have encountered it?
Yeah. What? Yeah. I kind of got asked this same question in a different webinar that was actually published earlier this week. And since that was recorded, which was, by the way, last year, I've been further refining the onus behind that. Okay. It's long and dragged out if we really start to double click on things, but it's actually quite simple. Okay. What is thought of as an agile coach, spoken about as an agile coach by and large, is not really what that is. Okay. So it's really talking back to that what is by and large referred to as an agile coach really isn't what you think. And that hashtag is to draw the attention to, without naming names, that we have some folks out there who I keep poking and prodding at, that there are bigger, broader issues about this thing called an agile coach that need to be addressed, that have been, and I'll just say it this way, have been somewhat whitewashed, okay, and that we see the effects of in business today. Certain mass layoffs, I won't name the company, certain statements about agile is dead and the reasons for that, and this shift towards, well, maybe we can call them delivery managers and wonky things like that. But that starts to double click on the hyperlink, and I'll stop there.
Well, and you need to explain like the hashtag itself.
Well,
why no such thing? Why no such thing? It took me a while to figure that out too myself.
Well, Well, it's because I'm going to upset the apple cart a little bit. Okay, there is a phrase out there that unfortunately I get where the person's good intentions are headed, but in a sense veils, or I'm not going to say misrepresents, but veils what they're trying to say in it. And so I'll just come out and say it. Not everyone can be an agile coach.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so that's why hashtag no such thing as an agile coach, because again, as I said, what is purported to be it as it is really one piece of a bigger thing. Okay, but that's the thing everybody focuses on. Okay, and some people have started to peel away at that onion and say, well, it's not just that. No, spit it out already. Don't dance around it. Spit it out already. You know, go ahead. It's okay to admit it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just that. Okay, and very importantly, it's that isn't even the most important thing about that. Okay. And so some people have started to creep out of it, but they're afraid because, well, let me again be further blunt. There are certain certifying bodies that make their living off of saying, well, this is what an agile coach is. And I'm like, no, that's not what they do. And that's why, by and large, these things called agile coaches are getting laid off and finding themselves without work. That's not a good thing.
Yeah. And I think how we became, how I got involved with Marcelo through LinkedIn is primarily through LinkedIn is sort of like there was a resonance between what he was pointing out, the blind spot, right? And I too have been doing the same thing. I too am an agile coach, right? I work at the enterprise level at times, and they are. And let's give props and respects and acknowledgement of the shoulders we stand on. We're not saying that. We're not saying that we don't respect those voices. Like Lisa Atkins' work is critical. It was a milestone. Obviously, the manifesto is a milestone.
Mm-hmm.
However, when I am practicing and employing any tool, any task, anything, if I am truly a scientific thinker and I employ empiricism, and this is a comment that I have said many times before on LinkedIn, is sort of like everything needs to be stress tested. Mm-hmm. We can't just rely on, just like how we challenge the hippo, we need to also challenge the thought leader. Can we be more evidence-based as an industry to say, yeah, Scrum works here, but where's the boundary where Scrum falls apart? Where's the boundary where XP falls apart? Where's the boundary where pair programming, what's its strengths, what's its weaknesses? And then if you look at some people, like my favorite definition of wisdom is knowing when to apply certain knowledge. That's wisdom. It's not knowledge and wisdom. It's not the same thing. So there is to kind of pull it back into Ryan, this jazz analogy is, it's not about knowing all your licks and all your tricks. It's not how to play tastefully, how to make music, right? It's about employing what is needed by the music at the moment and by what the client and the audience are willing to hear, right? Mm-hmm. And so when we begin to look at that in that way, what we are saying is we are revealing a possibly wider worldview, because you could argue that I would argue what has been done with the certification bodies is that we have codified what Agile code for the sake of creating these commodities called certifications. We've codified that work. We've frozen it academically, and therefore, in a way, it ceases to innovate. Right, it ceases to grow and emerge even further, because then we say, hey, if you don't have these certifications, you're not legitimate. But the problem is, we've converged too early. We don't understand enough because, and what I can point back to the State of Agile reports. If I'm wrong about this, then why are we failing at the rate of 75% of transformations that are not successful? So that tells me we haven't found the answer yet. There's more music to be made. There's more to explore. There's more to stress test. Right?
Well, there's no winner of music, by the way. There's that piece of music is undoubtedly a 10 or undoubtedly a 7, and is a 7 because of A1, A, B, C, D, this empirical kind of stuff. So that
right.
that work, that human work, mechanizing it and empiricizing it in one way is denigrating to the work, right? So that's one half of it, and I think that part of the whatever you, again, Marcel, I know you're going to come in with psychology on this, the psychology and the psychologization of the therapization of software development. Is this one thing that that got added to the mix by Lisa, bless her, because it didn't exist before that.
Well,
there was a lot more mechanistic. Well, so the XP coach. Okay, so then come back. So rewind it.
Yeah, rewind it. Not even Lisa. 2009, a book by wonderful person, original XPer, Rachel Davies. And I forget her co-author, Liz, I'm thinking, but I'm forgetting the last name. If you actually look at the book, it actually describes this arc of what the Scrum Master is, or the Agile coach is, and it uses a Scrum team as an example. But it very clearly states, and it's one of those things that once you get in your head, it's hard to get out. Page 19 clearly states, as you progress Scrum Mastering a team, you effectively become a life coach for that team. Okay? I only have one word for that. Ooh.
Nobody they didn't ask for that. Am I misunderstanding this? That is something one asks for?
Correct. And so here's the thing. I'm thinking, for lack of a better phrase, I'm trying to be giving the benefit of the doubt that perhaps not having further refined mental models, they went to the closest thing that related to them, that made sense for them. Here is the problem with that. Everybody in their model has latched onto that concept, taken it, extruded it, bifurcated it. Well, heck, more than bifurcated it, because now you have coactive and you have ORSC and things we can talk about in the rest of the streamcast. But the idea there is that it's taken on its life of its own, and it's forgotten the fact that the first principle, if you will, or the foundational tenet was incorrect. I'm not going to say wrong, because that's a moral judgment, and I'm not here to cast moral judgments on anyone. But it was an incorrect logic assumption in their algorithm, and unfortunately, it's been perpetuated. Okay, all this time, it's been furthered by a certain coaching certifying body, and by another
Scrum Alliance
that's been around. Huh?
Well, I'm saying, so if we're going to be real, let's be real. That
you want to name names? Is that what you're trying to say, Ryan?
Name names, because
okay.
That's
all right.
the
Stand
way
back.
that happens.
Stand back. There'll be a blast radius. Okay.
Put on your flame retardant suits.
There, I just said ICF. Okay, because if you look at their code of ethics, it's set up perfectly well for a professional coach that's in that kind of situation. But for an Agile coach, the code of ethics for the ICF is a sieve full of craters. It's not just small little holes. We're talking about gaping holes in the code of ethics, with you applying it to what an Agile coach needs to be able to do. I've made this reference to this thing of an Agile coach has a fiduciary duty. Someone's giving you money for some objective. You have a fiduciary responsibility for that. Okay. I mean, as a consultant, for sure. But as an employee, absolutely. Why? Because as an employee, agile coach, you're not just a part. Your boat is hitched to that flotilla. And if that flotilla is going into a storm, your boat's going with it.
Right.
As an
And
employee.
this leads back to my recent post, which brought on this discussion, right? Because I argue, Marcelo, a little bit differently. It's not that it's inaccurate, it's incomplete.
I can go with that.
Right?
I can go with that. Sure.
It's incomplete because what we have done. Let's be honest about what we've done. We've taken a dialect that is normally done in a dyad, meaning me and a client, and we're having a conversation about that, and I'm having them in their worldview trying to explore what's possible for them, right? And then we've taken that and assumed that we, just as we made the mistake of scaling Agile, somehow we can take the same coaching frameworks and scale them to teams, scaling to actual work. And with that, notice how that something like Coactive or ORSC or any other coaching framework or methodology, I'm trained in a particular one that is quite deep. I've been doing it for the last of years. So it's not like I'm a critic of life coaching either, you know. I'm a fan of it. There's times it's again, it's a tool. Use it in the right context. However, notice what the blind spot that we are looking at is we are blind to the worldview that those paradigms bring.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And what we need to do is we need to look at each one and say, just as I said earlier, we have to look at its strengths, we have to look at weaknesses, we have to look at where context should I apply that. Many people have figured out that, hey, I don't need to be a life coach 100% of the time in an agile context. This is the magic pixie dust that I sprinkle from time to time, especially in building influence, right? As an agile coach, I rarely have a client that week after week after week, we work on their personal stuff. It's always in 1 week we might do personal stuff. The next week we're doing actually live actual problems that they're facing. Now we're back into the agile world, coaching, mentoring, modeling, consulting at times, right? And because there's two fundamental problems, and one of the assumptions is like Marcelo, you brought this up recently, right? Classic move is, what's the classic moves in life coaching? Meet them where they're at and assume positive intent. The problem is that works fine when, Ryan, if you're paying me to life coach you, this is an interaction exchange between just you and I. If you don't like me, you fire me. If I don't like you, I leave. I terminate, right? Mm-hmm. In an agile context, that's different, right? Because now the relationships are far more complex. And then what happens is, and I would argue that even agile in itself has a problem, and no system really knows how to deal with bad actors. Because there's a side here that we have to confront, and as agile coaches, there must be boundaries at times when somebody is a bad actor. There's an employee who is, not performant, clearly not interested. Let me give you an example. What if you were working on a development team and one of them happens to be overemployed? How do you fire them? Should you fire them? That is clearly
overemployed in the
company. Overemployed meaning they're double dipping. They're working two full-time jobs or more.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I have come across this before where it was a manager that was double dipping. I've even heard of a case where an agile coach was double dipping.
Yeah.
Right? Yep. So how are we, right? No amount of ICF is going to help you with that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're not authorized to enforce compliance at that point. No. You have no formal authority in the way that the organization is built, right?
Correct.
That's a whole
different
other conversation. That the organization that the only way group dynamic and software development,
Yeah.
and that we really ought to work is with peer level accountability and that kind of stuff, where you're talking about being an ensemble, being in mutual respect with everyone. That I'm going to hold you accountable, Huy. If you're double dipping, I know it, and that impacts me, that impacts Marcelo. And now, as a system of people, of human beings, it is our responsibility to deal with that. But that's not how that you're saying. That's not how the cookie is baked.
They don't. Lisa's book doesn't tell you that. Doesn't tell you how to deal with that situation. I'm not saying Lisa's wrong. If everybody is a good actor, it's a lot far more manageable, right? But when you have and I'm not saying let's not fixate on this, right? This is a case where you have a player that is not willing to play nice with everybody else, is out to manipulate for themselves.
And can I pause there?
But
name me an agile transformation, Ryan, where that doesn't exist. Where everybody's shiny, happy people about their we're going to use Cotter, where everybody is shiny and happy about change. Find one agile transformation where that happens. The answer is nowhere. Never happened.
So this is the whole thing, that there's no such thing as an agile coach. There is no such thing as resistance to change. What is being you have to double click on that a couple times before you get to what am I?
It's not resistance to
change.
Wait.
I want to hear what he says, Marcelo. Let him go.
Okay, go for it.
So the system is resisting because the system is built, and there are particular structures that incentivize. And I'm afraid that I'm going to lose status if I don't comply with the set of shared values that are here.
Okay,
or all of those kinds of I'm not afraid. I don't understand why this is happening, and I don't agree with why this is happening.
Okay,
and you can call it resistance or whatever, but I have mastery in my field. I have worked for so long, and I've gotten results that I feel proud of. And now you're telling me this, and don't spin some line of bullshit on me about I don't have a growth mindset.
Okay.
Well,
that's a whole other conversation about growth versus fixed mindset. That's a different.
Brian, you're speaking to a topic I brought up about a year and a half ago. That if we're not careful, the agile coach can also be seen as colonizer. That's exactly what you're describing. I'm here to tell you that you are a backwards individual living in an indigenous culture, and you should live your life in this modernistic way that I'm presenting. And notice how that resistance arises. Right or wrong, whether the indigenous person, meaning an exec, for example, that's who you're calling out, right? An exec has a particular worldview, and we're coming along here and we're saying, nah, you need to let go of you need to delegate all your power. And you need to let your bonus come at the whim because your teams know better and your teams are going to decide for you. I'm not saying I'm playing devil's advocate, but in a way, right? But I'm not saying right or wrong either way, but just notice that dynamic exists. That is the system, and the system speaks in terms of politics. It speaks in terms of turf wars. It speaks in terms of wicked problems. Now we begin to talk about trauma, because the trauma exists in the organization. I could even argue that Agile itself is a trauma level industry response to what? It's a trauma level response to the death march. Mic drop. Right?
Yeah. And to kind of roll back to what you were saying, Ryan. Yeah, I get that it's not just personal resistance to change per se. There's structures. You've invested in them. Okay, you've gotten comfortable with them. They're like a nice warm sweater that's worn in and it fits you just right. Okay, but here's the reality of things in business, and why I tell folks you need to take ownership of your own career. Okay. You as an employee, I'm going to speak in the United States. Okay. Are there at the behest of the company. You are not the company. You are not a company man, Ryan. You're an employee of that company. You're not a company man. Okay. And if you lull yourself into thinking that you're a company man, okay, I'm using you as an example. Okay. You've lulled yourself into that sense of security when you never had that security to begin with.
Are you
Okay.
talking about the paternalist nature of the company is going to care for me kind of thing? I'm not sure the distinction you're making.
Yes, and people get accustomed to that. So what ends up happening is that those structures that you talk about, they're familiar, they're comfortable. I know how to navigate that sort of stuff. I know how to get by. Okay. And the fact is, if anything, we should have learned organizationally from the pandemic is that getting by is not what gets us through. Okay. And everybody talks about Agile as a journey. Well, what the hell are we doing? Excuse my French there, but we're not getting by. We're getting through. We're going through a journey. And to get through, we need to, I'll say it, we need to get a little more comfortable with not being comfortable. I'm not saying uncomfortable, but not being comfortable.
It's about dancing in the void of VUCA, not avoiding it.
Not avoiding it. Okay. And that's what, by and large, basically is the slamming into the brick wall of Agile transformations. Okay.
Right.
Everybody will talk about all this stuff. Very few people want to navigate this. Okay.
The moment they run into the heartache of failure, they start giving up.
Yeah. And here's a blast from a past, because I quoted something from years back, so I'll quote this. This is 2012. The book is called The Advantage. I mean, this was like a click for me when I was a product owner and why I was meeting resistance up at the upper echelon levels of things when we wanted to do things more nimbly. Okay. The fact is that as that book points out, some of the stuff that makes or breaks an organization's nimbleness, agility, the ability to pivot is upper management recognizing that getting and keeping their actual hands dirty in something is not beneath them. And that is a huge thing. And by the way, middle management, oh yeah, that applies to you too, fellas and ladies. Okay. Or however it is you express yourself. The fact is we all get complacent. So I'm taking a little bit of onus on that myself.
And now we're back. Let me just comment on this. Now we're back into TPS, Genji Genbutsu, Gemba, the old school, the OG Agile stuff coming out of Toyota, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like now it's like we're talking about, let's go visit the place of work. Let's go observe. And there was a question recently by another person. We were exchanging some messages. And this is like, and I made this comment, exact comment to Marcelo. It's like, is a transformation any good if the leader doesn't go into the Gemba, doesn't go to the place of work, doesn't go observe? If they see it as being above them, then I think you're in trouble.
Or below them? You mean
if they see if going to the Gemba is below them and they don't need to do that, then I think you might be in a little bit of trouble.
Yeah. There's no respect for people there, don't you think?
Yeah. So therein lies the rub. How do we connect that? How do we connect it back that about Agile coach? One of the things that an Agile coach needs to be able to do, okay, is recognize that even if you're applying a professional coach stance where you're helping someone, okay, you must be able to tell the person something for their own betterment, okay, even if you're in a coaching position, okay, even if you're in a coaching position, okay. I mean, people like to use the inaccurate sports coach metaphor. A sports coach, especially if they are experienced in the game for which they're playing, will tell a player, you're literally doing it wrong. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but you are doing it wrong. Okay.
Well, this is music too. Yeah, you're putting your finger, and this is the fingering for that, or there are several
That's right.
fingerings for
That's
this.
right.
Mhm.
But you're doing this, you're not going to get the results you want.
That's right. So let me.
And then that's instruction, that's teaching, that's
That's right.
training,
That's right.
and and
It's
Marcel,
more. Put it
you're
this way.
talking about
It's more than.
advice. You're talking about advice,
Yeah.
advisory service.
Whoa, 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 whoa! It's not even advice. It's the sound of reason. It's the
Yeah.
voice of a conscience for that person.
It is. It is a. Is it a? The way I put it, I'm a huge agile coaches. If you want to walk around with one piece of material that nobody's looking at, go watch this guy named John Vervaeke and his series called Awakening from the Meaning Crisis.
Yeah.
And I
You,
see
you gotta have you gotta have 50 hours
and
on
have
your
50 hours. But go watch like
Yeah.
the first few episodes. And the key point, and I want to answer this question about stances. So if you go into, I think it's in the 30s range of his series, Vervaeke talks about stances because I'm a sort of former martial artist too, right? And the way he's a Tai Chi player, and he talks about stances because stances is a way of like it's not like a foundation. I don't root myself in that stance. It's a place in which I am gripping the situation. Right? And I'm gripping it with the way that I have my hands up. I'm ready to handle what's going on. Just as you literally talk about am I gripping my instrument? How am I gripping the moment? And this is where he talks about Merleau-Ponty's concept of maximal gripping. I can't be too close to the problem, but I can't be too far. I have to be just the right distance to the problem. That's what stance is. Right. So when we don't talk space, I mean, how can you talk about stance without talking spatially? Right. Mm-hmm. So in a way, if I'm coaching or I'm mentoring or I'm training, those are different distances to the problem. Right. I may need to come in and do hand-to-hand combat with this thing. I may need with any particular situation. Right. I may need the standoff distance might be 2 inches, and I need to be a modeler. I need to be a consultant as an agile coach, because clearly my clientele, aside from positive intent, it's clearly they can't do it.
Yeah.
And I have to show. But then I have to be, for those that have skill, I need to stand back and watch and enter when it's right.
Mm-hmm.
So timing now matters. It's rhythm now matters, right?
And here's the thing. People will turn around and say, well, Marcelo, what you're talking about sounds like an agile consultant. And I go, yeah, because that's what you're accustomed to hearing. That's what the big consulting companies, the McCenture Lloyds of the world, that's what you're used to hearing from them. Okay. But that's not really the case. Okay. That's not really the case. If the person working as an agile coach, okay, is a trusted person, okay, or is supposed to function as a trustable person, a trustable person should be able to tell you the truth in any stance. Okay, an agile coach should be able to portray the truth of the matter. Okay, I'll say maybe a little dispassionately. Why? Because we're not dealing with children. We're dealing with adult professionals. Okay. And in the case of executives, what executives don't need is coddling. Okay. They need candor at the end of the day. Okay.
You talk about professionalism, Mark.
Exactly. Real professionalism.
At the level of that context, like for instance, like what Marcelo, what's really resonating for me as you're talking about this, like Barry Oshry's work on the Power Lab. And I don't know if any of you guys have seen this, right? It's like that there's our tops, bottoms, and middles. They all notice how they all have a separate worldview. They have separate concerns. They have a separate self-justification. Oftentimes, those justifications and they're not in harmony, right?
I don't have the I want you to go back to that concept. So go ahead.
Yeah, and then the other thing I'm going to throw out here is we forget that when we transform, just as it is to go from one state of matter into another, from a gas into a liquid, into a solid, it takes energy to transform. If there is no latent energy in the system, you can't do it. And so when this is kind of like, I do something, I would imagine some systems thinkers think of it this way. They think in terms of CAS and various orders of systems thinking. But the other side is that every system has a bioeconomy. It can only handle so much. You and I have to go to bed every night, because otherwise, if we don't have rest, we can't function. We have to eat right. We have to do this. We have to do that. Just as it is, as an agile team needs to work sustainably. That denotes that it has some sort of bioeconomy.
Mm-hmm.
We understand that bioeconomy. Because if the bioeconomy is in a way where they are constantly putting all their time into delivering, and there's no room for improvement, you know, you run in a circle, and the next day you wake up and you've got a heart attack kind of thing, right? There's no attention to self-care, there's no attention to growth, and that also stifles it.
You gave me two thoughts with what you just said.
Yeah.
One, most executives, regardless of their level, when they engage in this thing called an agile transformation, okay, they're thinking of economics, but they're not thinking of it in the way you just described.
That's right.
They don't by and large, okay. You know, and within the last few years, I was involved in an agile transformation involved, more than 5,000 people. Okay. And the executives didn't take into account the bioeconomy of what would happen when we actually start doing this.
Mm-hmm.
What sort of reserves in that bioeconomy should we have had? Because stuff that was there, how could I say this, in the permafrost of the organization, okay, when it started to melt, started to generate gases which worked against
that's right
the inertia that we were building up, okay. And even despite what some of the coaches were telling them, okay, though that sort of resistance was ignored, okay, and so things ended up getting invariably stalled as we expected them to stall, okay.
That's right.
Okay, that's
the ghost in the term permafrost get revealed again. And notice how, like, somebody in the comments start mentioning, what about family constellations? This is where family constellations appear. Because if you don't address the systemic issues, the systemic traumas, guess what? They come up and they repeat the same loops. Right? And then okay, now we've just said, hey, wait a minute. If I don't address the bioeconomy of the organization and unwind or heal some of the past transgressions, that could fail my transformation as well.
Here's the thing by and large. Okay. If you wanted to apply that kind of work, okay, that's where I start getting into this whole thing of therapization of agile coaching, okay? Because those sorts of things, okay, would be typically handled by trained professional clinicians. Why? Because they have a different set of ethics, okay, than professional coaches do, okay? And they have a certain set of ethics that get tested against. Otherwise, what? You lose your license. It's not just that. You lose your license by and large. And I'll go this far. You could be subject to certain legal ramifications thereof. I don't mean money either as well, okay? Which is, by and large, what ends up happening is that, and I haven't talked too much about this before, is that what ends up happening is that these things that come up in that permafrost, as they start to dissolve, okay, what those require, okay, are certain types of interventions.
That's right.
Okay, because
that's what, like, Oris attempts to do, for instance, right? In a way, family constellations is revealing a place, the angle or the doorway in which one can stage an intervention, right?
Yeah. The thing is this, is that to apply it the way that it is by and large purported, okay, follows a pseudo clinical approach, okay, which can actually be harmful, okay,
If employed improperly. If employed improperly.
Well, let's put it to you this way. Let's put it to you this way, okay? If we could say, because this is a chicken the egg thing, okay, to apply properly, one must have experience. Okay, great. Okay, but how do I get experience? By screwing up a few hundred times. Okay,
Practice.
and then what do you do during that? What happens in your wake? Okay, so
That's
here,
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
So here's for me. It's like, look, at the end of the day, this stuff, professional coaching, is a tool in the tool belt.
Yes.
Okay, it is but one tool, and it is by far not the real principal tool you should be applying. Use it when necessary as it emerges, and use it insofar carefully and only targetedly. And if you see it going beyond a certain boundary, okay, you need to step back yourself. Have some self-awareness and say, this is not the kind of problem that I have to just apply this. I may have to apply more things than just professional.
We can't just blindly apply powerful questions willy-nilly and expect a good result. Right?
And you see,
where lies the rub. I want a chance to respond on that. So just, because I have a lot to say about that topic too.
Please.
So the issue here is, and I think the other side is, remember my comment about premature convergence. And you could even argue that ICF has also prematurely converged in some senses. I've seen it. I've in my training, and they're waking up to the reality of what does it mean to start to integrate trauma into coaching work. And vice versa, right now, I would argue the therapy world is going through a crisis as well, because they realize that some of their modalities don't work. And there are even cases of therapists who have left therapy and gone to coaching because they felt less restrained by their modality. And then they found more effectiveness as a life coach. Because because sometimes, me as an agile coach, as a professional coach, as a life coach, if I'm going to coach one of you guys, my number one goal is to help you be present with what's happening to you.
Yep.
But for you to do that, sometimes you wander a little bit into trauma. So we have to now we're no longer in Kansas, Dorothy. We're like, what does trauma-informed, trauma-sensitive agile coaching looks like? Nobody's talking about that. There's very, very few people talking about that. And it's not something that you saunter in willy-nilly throwing out these different things. No, because if you're not prepared, you could be, and if even the definition of ethics need to shift a little bit in this paradigm. Right?
Boy, are we not asking too much of the person, this one human being that gets dropped into this role and labeled as such? I mean,
that's
I think
the problem. And then what happens is
so here, let me think about this. And if we were to just erase these two words from, strike our magic wand, what is it that this role is actually being asked to do? What is the purpose of this human being that's dropped into the system that is, we're trying to do iterative software development, and what is this that is not an AC, that those words don't exist?
So
really, go.
Let me just say something real quick, Marcelo, and you can have time.
Please.
The key issue is the moment you start to say, hey, my job is to do impediment removal. That is a whole universe of different possibilities and a whole different sets of skill sets. And at times, there's a particular popular coaching model or agile coaching skills model that I'm, that
Mhm.
we've kind of poked at here and there, right? Is it enough? Which parts of it are more important? Which context? Which ones do I apply? Which ones are, because at the
Which ones
bit,
are appropriate for this
which
particular
ones are
organization?
appropriate?
What's the
And what's
right?
appropriate for me as the coach based on my skill set,
Yep.
and not, or even when is it appropriate for me to take a chance to go into a territory I'm not used to, I'm not comfortable, but I do have some skill around, right?
Right.
So it's, there's nothing but gray area. And then when we start to talk about sensitivity and those kinds of things, like, well, yeah, you have to have training on knowing how to do it. There are actual skills anybody can learn.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just like you learn Agile, right?
Yeah.
So,
It put it this way. It's like a slight twist on the phrase from Glengarry Graham Ross. Always be closing. Will always be learning.
always be learning.
Always be learning.
So
I mean,
you've led us, I would say, Ryan, even that last statement, right? And I know I was going to yield my time. You've led us back to the beginning. For me, the hashtag, no such thing as an Agile coach. I know, Marcelo, you jokingly did this on April Fools, but it was to me, it's a play off the term, if everything's important, nothing's important.
Yeah. Yeah.
If Agile coaching is everything, then there's no such thing as Agile coaching.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is what it is. Because for me, I'm now, you know how I've started off at 2009, I went 2012. I'm going to go back to 2001. The answer for what is an Agile coach has been baked into the Agile Manifesto from the beginning.
From the beginning.
It's in the freaking preamble. Okay. We are uncovering better ways by doing it and helping others to do it. That's what an Agile coach does.
That's right. Whatever that means. Whatever
that means. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what an Agile coach does. Okay.
That's right.
And I'll go even further. Is that even coactive? I would make an argument. Yeah, because you're investing yourself in the other person uncovering a better way to do whatever they're trying to do. Okay. Even so far in the sense of, hey, Ryan, I think this really doesn't make sense what you're trying to do. Okay. I didn't tell you what didn't make sense, but I injected the question for you to self-reflect and become more self-aware. Okay. Here's one of the things that I found that is, again, a gap. It can be fixed, but it is a gap. Unfortunately, it's a wide gaping hole. The way this stuff is reinforced, okay, in the education and in the mentoring for the professional coaching things is, I cannot question you. I am not supposed to question you and your intentions that assume positive intent. Are you kidding me? How old were we when we were told that joke? When I assume, I make a what out of you and me? These are adults we're dealing with.
That's right.
Come on. Okay.
And far more difficult, right? And so
far more difficult.
Far more difficult. And therefore we can't just saunter in with a 5-day certification. We have to have bedside manner, what I call, we have to be able to build influence. We have to understand personal brand, right? We have to understand team brand. We have to understand how to help somebody develop their personal and their team brand. In addition to all of these other things, business sense, making money for the bottom line, being fiduciarily responsible, right? Knowing how to help managers deal with a bad actor. As well as, you got to do CI/CD, you got to do TDD, you should swarm, you should do pair and mob programming. That's a lot of stuff. And we drop these people in with 5-day certs. They label themselves with this. And they have no idea what they're getting themselves into.
Yeah, and I'll go you further. Okay. Because there's been, some thoughts is like, well, then what happens if it's the executive themselves, if it's the manager themselves that, quote unquote, are the problem. Okay. What do you do? What do you do then? Okay.
Oh, what if the coach is the problem?
What if the
What
coach?
if you're
Well,
not
yeah,
aware that you
what
are
if
the
the coach is the
problem?
problem? What if the coach is the problem? What
Right.
what if this person who is a coach, okay, puts together agile maturity assessments for sake of argument? Let's give an example, okay, simply to appease management, and the team actually makes no progress towards improving themselves, becoming a better team. Okay. And by the way, before anybody questions, oh, that never happens, Marcelo. I've said it before. There are a million naked stories in the world of Agile. This is one of them, and it's certainly true. Okay. It happens more often than you would think. Okay. And I would think that to Matt's question in the chat, it isn't anything for the betterment of the people involved. Maybe it's not performance that's necessary. Okay.
Mhm.
Better is better. What does better mean to us today? It certainly doesn't mean what it meant 4 years ago. I'm going to leave that sitting there, Ryan. I'm not going to say anything else about that about that topic. Um, you know, but for me, in a nutshell, again, this thoroughly comes back to being able to have this conversation openly. I
That's
have
right. Honestly,
I have repeatedly invited proponents of ICF, and I'll say the other one, IC Agile, to have a frank conversation about these gaping holes. No
Mhm.
one's stepped up yet.
That's right.
No
And I
one.
don't expect them to,
I
Marcel,
don't
for
expect them
various
to
reasons.
either.
But
The
but what
invitation
but
is
where
there.
I want to give the people, like, we've been doing a lot of criticism, but where do we go next? What do we do with this? Like, okay, how do we lead out of this sort of
Glad you
crisis,
asked.
this meta agile coaching crisis, right?
Mhm. Well, for me, where this goes, partially, well, several pieces. One is recognize that we own where we go with this. At the end of the day, we personally, individually, own where we go with this. Okay. And if we want to, regardless of model, really use our skills to help others improve themselves. In other words, what a coach, that little mental model of a coach would do, okay, whether you look at Yoda or Alfred the butler, whoever, okay, that we have to own this, okay, and that it can't be anchored on one set of tools.
That's right.
Okay. It can't be anchored on one set of tools. Okay. And it can't be one tool centric. It's become one tool centric too much. Okay. In other words, we need to back off this sort of stuff. I know that someone's going to be talking soon at a conference about, that agile coaches should not just rely on powerful questions and whatnot. I'm very happy to see that. Unfortunately, I won't be able to see that conference talk, but that's a baby step towards where we go to. Okay, that's a baby step towards where we go to.
I mean, for me, no disagreement on any of that. I think is the not one tool. I would expand it is that we need an ever-growing list of, to use Vervaeke's terms, an ecology of practices, psychotechnologies, right? Everything. Somebody mentioned, like, oh yeah, this is why I have a coach. Hey guys, personally, actually, I have two personal coaches.
Hmm.
I pay for these guys, right? So yes, but remember that is one worldview, one modality. There are others, and there's other undiscovered ones. Remember the preamble. We are uncovering better ways. And we need to learn how to adapt and borrow from other fields. Like a lot of agile coaches and product people come in and like design and stuff like that. My wife came from an anthropology background. We have much to learn from other disciplines, right? and we haven't uncovered that. We haven't. This is the problem with that premature convergence. So what we need to do is then, yeah, maybe we need, fine. You can use the Agile certifications as is now as a starting place. But the reality is, realize that we are in a far deeper territory here to be successful. And we need to, in a way, challenge all our assumptions, even the ones we hold near and dear that we believe are true. And take a look at it again, not for the sake of destroying them or putting them down, but we need to also look at it and say, like, hey, what are the advantages and disadvantages? And every tool recognize how each one has a worldview, right? Yeah. And what other new worldviews are there? Because I can guarantee you, the moment that you walk into an indigenous culture, aka a company organization, they have a specific worldview that maybe this tool doesn't match.
Yeah, and I'm about to drop another little bomb I've been holding on to for a while. Okay. Because over the last year, I've been coaching teams all outside of the US. Not one team was inside of the US. I was the only human inside of the US. Well, myself and my business partner. Okay. Everybody else was scattered across the world, across APAC, the Middle East, and Europe. Okay. Here's another issue with the model, okay, that's held on to by the ICF. It is very Western centric. Very Western centric. Okay. Some of the modalities in there cannot work well at all in some other geographical areas with regards to different ethnic groups. They will not only wither, they might even explode.
That's right.
They might even explode. Okay. And to try to foster a generic coaching model like that, okay, I'll say it, Western centric minded, okay, no bueno.
Sounds like the C word to me.
I mean, So I mean, think about how psychological safety falls with the Asian crowd. That's a completely different worldview, a different approach to what it means.
Absolutely.
And then think about how can you talk about those things without talking about even how that interacts with intergenerational trauma coming from those communities.
Yep. And then it gets even hairier, Huy, when you've got folks working together in Malaysia, Pakistan, Jordan, okay, and a couple of other countries that I won't mention out. But when you've got team members that are working remote from each other with multiple cultures mixed in there, okay, it just goes poof.
You don't have to even go that far, Marcelo. Just even the continental U.S. itself, right?
Yeah.
Me, California, you, Floridian, and a lot of Californians struggle with the East Coasters, like New Yorkers, straight direct, or those that are maybe from the north that are,
and those of us in flyover country who hate both of you.
That's right.
Yeah, so, it's okay. I'll take it. I take the criticism. I'm totally down with that. I'll take the criticism.
But this goes back to the hashtag. This is why now I grok the hashtag. It took me a little while, admittedly, but I grok the hashtag. And then what we're saying is we need to challenge ourselves and everything we hold to be true for the sake of our clientele and the sake of our own value, what we bring.
Correct. Otherwise, the current state of the market, okay, will continue to it. And the economy in the United States could improve. Okay.
75% failure rate is not something to be proud of.
Yeah.
You can't sell that.
Yeah. Absolutely. And and you can't continue to incur that kind of hit on your reputation, okay, and it not have ripple effects. I mean, I'll be honest with you, that's one of the reasons why folks have latched onto that Agile is dead thing, which I think is silly, with all due respect to the folks putting it out there. I won't name names. I think it's silly. Okay. Because it was, what Agile is about was with us before the
Going
silly
back to the death march is
manifesto.
not an option. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So not being Agile is not an option.
No.
Okay.
That's right.
And to answer the question, how do you come to the challenge when the model doesn't support that? Ditch the model.
Ditch the model. Come up with
Ditch the model.
Find better ways.
It's in the Agile Manifesto. Exactly, Huy. Find better ways. Okay. And recognize that by and large, until I'll use it this way, until positive intent is established, assume not. Do the other way around.
Yeah,
okay?
yeah. So I'm going to bring Ryan, I'm going to bring you back in here, right?
Yeah.
Because this is the world in which, how do we bring about that things like collective design, open space technology, how do we create spaces for it? How do we get people ready for that? That's a jarring worldview to get into if that's not what you're used to, right?
Invitation based.
Invitation based. Really?
What?
But
what are you talking about, invitation based? Well, and the thing is this, that even in there, and I've had this conversation with Daniel, and I would love to have it again, but even in invitation-based agility, there's that, I hate to say it this way, an implied threat. Okay. And it kind of, got says, well, why is that? Because if the executive sponsor gets it and gets the need for it, and you not only assumed but established a system where they're going to hold themselves accountable for movement in a better direction. In other words, the executive sponsor has enough self-awareness that they've established a system and an agreement with you as a coach or with a team of coaches to be held accountable for their contribution. Okay. Then you could say, here we have some positive proof that this invitation is real.
That's right.
Okay. And otherwise, when you apply that without that sort of mechanism, an agile transformation includes that implied threat that you're coming along. You're welcome to come along, but we're coming along. You see what I'm saying? And
if you're on the bus, you're on the bus or you're not.
Yeah,
and exactly. This is what the bus is, and this is where it's going.
Exactly. So it carries. So that's the thing, that most folks that talk about invitational agility don't really quite understand what they're signing up for, because you're trying to get to the fact that it's a recognition that the person who's sponsoring this gets what their role is, recognizes it's not beneath them, and establishes that agreement. Here's the thing that I had a back and forth with someone yesterday here on LinkedIn, was that this is the stuff that's usually missing.
That's right.
And I'm sorry, the person wasn't kind of really getting the fact of what I was saying. But the fact is that by and large, that's what we're missing.
So
we don't have
that. Let me yes and this, because I'll raise another blind spot. Okay. Somebody mentioned this, don't trust blindly, look at trustworthiness. And then there's this question, hey, AI is going to solve everything. No, it isn't. Why? because what happens is, if you look at trustworthiness, or these kind of so-called now we're back to bad actors or unwilling actors, right? We have to be able to look at the landscape and the structures in which the people exist. You can't just do open space willy-nilly without looking at the structures that it's sitting on, the soil for which everything is growing. Because if the soil can't handle the growth, or the soil is resistant to that growth, you better detox it.
I have gone to the mat on this, because open space agility, open space technology is not just about one day, the 4 principles, one law, and the stuff that is the technique of that. Yeah. That's the end of the cake that you're baking. Yeah, that's okay.
There's groundwork to be done. You have to till the soil. Right?
That is exactly what I was going to say. You have to till the soil, and that that the folks who are the gardeners, the folks who own, who steward the land, however you want to say that sense of ownership to stewardship, and that sense of, oh, I have responsibility to create this ground that we're on, to make sure that what wants to be here is in right relationship.
That's
with
right.
The world.
And then the other side,
with the people. And,
right,
so, and that's the in OSA and open space agility, that's why you have 45 days in front of the whole process.
Yeah, this is where he's still a huge fan of Vervaeke's work, because the way he presents it's very clearly. It's an agent arena relationship. You have to address the arena. It's not just changing the culture. You must change the structures for which the culture exists. Because if you don't, chances are laws of thermodynamics, entropy take over again. Everybody snaps back into the old place.
Right.
Family constellations, right? And then now you're back to square one again, where we're back to how am I my transformation succeed if I don't address the structures in which everybody works?
Well, you end up with 150 feature factories.
Exactly. And then then we're back to Marcelo's point about communication, responsibility, Conway's law, all that good stuff, right? So in a sense, notice how in this dialogue, what we're saying is the tools that we have right now, what we're teaching, I would argue is poorly inadequate to deal with the larger context.
Yeah. It's insufficient.
It's insufficient.
It's insufficient, and that's what I've been talking about, because there are some approaches there that are trying to fill certain gaps by slicing that X-wing model up further and whatnot, and that's another conversation that to be had at a different time with perhaps even some other people involved in this, Ryan. Okay, because I to a small degree contributed to that other model, but my challenge again with that model is this insufficiency problem of relying to professional coaching as the underlying model to anchor all this stuff.
Yeah. And this is where, like, even my own experiments of where I'm working is like, we need to, design thinking is a powerful tool, because design thinking is the gateway drug to OSA, right? OST, right? We need to get into dialectic. We need to get into, for what Vervaeke calls opponent processing, that I can hold multiple worldviews. They can be even opposing worldviews, that I can hold opposing worldviews with you guys and other people that I associate with. And from that, we combat self-bullshit.
It's Mary Parker Follett, it's Peter Block, it's all of this kind of stuff that is coming into community. I mean, it's simple, with each other, for each other. And I think the other thing that this part too, I think in hearing this discussion, talking about the insufficiency of each of these tools, to inject them into particular body parts in the organization, this idea of an enterprise Agile coach is almost even more ridiculous, because you're talking about, now I have to know everything.
Sadly, I hate to tell you, one of my favorite sayings is they're all coaching is enterprise coaching.
Yes.
Well, but the thing is, in what enterprise, how big of an enterprise can you actually have influence over? And I think this is the idea.
Therein lies the rub. Because that's an artificial slicing, Ryan. Okay, by creating that strata, you're an Agile coach, but we's an enterprise Agile coach. You've now introduced a caste system, okay, which another friend of mine, I wish you were around lately. I'm going to give him a shout out. John Peterson, okay, was talking about a while back about this artificial caste system that's also been built in, okay. Where agility never spoke of a caste system. As a matter of fact, it was anti-caste. It was anti-caste. Principle number 4: the business and the developers work daily. What does that mean? They're on equal footing. because they're all in this together, and they all recognize that they're all in this together. Okay. And then, I add that on top of that, because they create this stratification of caste, in some cases, even when you've got this person in an enterprise agile coach position that wants to collaborate, that wants to work with the agile coaches, isn't allowed to, isn't permitted to, is given different sets of constraints, often which are contradicting with the things that the agile coaches are being asked to do. And again, as I said earlier, if someone doubts me, okay, I will remind you there are a million naked stories in the agile transformation. This one is also true. Okay.
And God forbid that we might have a scrum master who is now the default. They are responsible for 2 teams, 10 people or more, 10 to 20 people. That, I think, is the maximum, beyond the maximum number of individual souls and hearts and minds that can be brought into a miniature community. And they have their own specific interactions. They have their own challenges, and that they got to have their own shit together. Right. So have you, and Huy, have you ever been in a big band?
Once. Yeah. Well,
So
I did. I only played in a rehearsal once, and it was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the thing. A big band is hard enough, let alone a trio, quartet, quintet. And we are talking about some group of 3 people handling 30,000 or more in an organization. I think that's the point we're saying. Coming back to the hashtag. And there's no such thing as an agile coach. We're just helpers.
We're helpers.
Yeah,
yes,
we're just helpers, man.
See, there's a post from a couple years ago that I said you can reinterpret the Agile Manifesto as basically all about compassion for the individual, the worker, the business owner, the customer, and that it's very Buddhist. And the last value is impermanence.
Mm-hmm.
And what are we doing? We are alleviating suffering. That's what all we really are doing. Ooh, neat, but terrifyingly difficult.
See, and there you see it. Therein lies the whole rub. Okay, that if we were, and I'm not going to say this as a casting an aspersion again, but if we were really agilists, in other words, people who believe the principles and the values stated in the Agile Manifesto and what's really underlying it, we would be able to have a more frank conversation about this.
And it's in the dialogue. It's in the dialogue that we go. Right.
Why are Huy and I having to say this? And now a few more people. Why are we the ones?
Because we're the right ones.
Be the change.
I don't take that much. I don't take that much credit. One of the, people like to use little phrases to help remind themselves. For me, part of my self-awareness is a phrase from Benjamin Franklin. So, gentlemen, cannot we doubt a little of our own infallibility? Okay. He used that phrase to goad the rest of the Continental Congress in Philadelphia to put their name to a little document called the Declaration of Independence. The only one who took him up on it initially was John Hancock, obviously. But basically, he was an invitational agilist. In that sense. He invited them to doubt a little of their infallibility. So yeah. I don't take much, if any, credit for this sort of stuff. I just like to ask questions, and this is one that's been lingering unanswered for a very long time.
You might not agree, Marcelo. The way I see this is, if you don't see this work as a calling, you have no business being in it, because it's gonna burn you. You're gonna fry. Yeah. And my mentor, one of my coach's mentors, he has David Chilcott. He has a saying that Agile is a spiritual practice. And
You could see
this
it
is
that
a
way.
calling. This is a calling.
Yeah,
And
you could see it that way. Yeah, for
you
sure.
can totally
You know?
see it that way. You know,
Yeah.
This is
and
like Dassault. This is the Agile Tao.
Yeah,
there is a doubt to it. And
even if you're not, even if you're not, even if you're a religious, okay, I'm not going to call you atheist, agnostic. Even if you're a religious, okay, if it feels right that you want to do this and you want to do it because it's not just a passion, but it feels that it's part of who you are, okay, then you got to commit. I mean, for example, Brian, I literally live 1 mile from where I used to work as chief product owner. I mean, literally, if I headed the way that I'm pointing right now, 1 mile, I had a cushy office overlooking a little lake. Okay, come and go as I please. Okay, and climb the corporate ladder. But I caught this agile bug, did what I did, learned a lot from it, had some good folks who, had the same sort of thinking, you know, put this in me and or woke it up, and here I am. And here I am.
yeah, I mean,
But you gotta want it.
you gotta want it, and you gotta be
it.
willing to sacrifice and surrender and give certain things
Mm.
up, because there's no way you can be a servant leader without surrendering
Yeah.
something.
Mm.
Yep.
It comes with the title.
Well,
Part and parcel,
I'm
man.
going to bring it back to open space, man. That's passion and responsibility combined.
Yes.
Right? You've got the passion and you're taking responsibility for what you want. Standing up in the center circle and saying what you love.
That's right.
And that's knowing who you are and who you're not.
And sometimes it's something that you can't describe, or it just comes through you. So I would say, Marcelo, we are the vehicles to bring this, because we're the ones that landed.
We're the only ones here. It was meant to happen because it was meant to happen, and whoever's here is the one that meant to be here.
We don't own it equally.
Yeah, I don't own this, and I fully hope that anybody else who's been listening into this or follow-up conversation goes back and has questions to some folks that they are either going through some training with or mentoring with along those pathways that I've mentioned, that you've mentioned here, and pushes against that, okay? Because I've seen a lot of people go through that and spoken to a fair number of folks, where the questions that you and I have talked about here, Huy, have been clanging around in their head, but they didn't feel as though they were being listened to.
That's right. And we're voicing it. We're naming it.
Yeah, we're giving it a name. Unfortunately, no such thing as an agile coach was the best I could do, Ryan. Sorry.
Yeah, well, that's okay. It's a nice hashtag. I see Torolf here in the comments. He showed up, and I think I know you go back with Torolf, and maybe he'll come to a jam sometime and be with us on stage. Usually at this point in time, I will ask both of you: is there anything that you wanted to say here today that you've not yet said? So, Huy, I'll go to you first.
I think we covered a lot. I think we've exposed I hope for those that are watching, we've exposed the rabbit hole to you that you've been in on this whole time. It should feel like you're as if you found a new house in your home, a new room in your house. Yeah. And then the idea is to realize that you may not have an answer, and other people may not have an answer, and you're gonna have to be okay with it. And I hope that you have the courage to do a little experimentation, find your own way, don't be afraid to fail, learn, bring it like hives to like a bees to a hive. Bring what you learn back to the hive and share it amongst others, because the reality is we still are scratching the surface, and if we don't work collectively, hey, agile coaching, it's a collective brand, whether you like it or not.
Yeah,
So if
here
we
to
don't,
stay,
if
maybe.
we don't function collectively, we're gonna be at, we're at each other's peril, so to speak.
Yep.
Thank you, Huy. Marcella, do you have some spice to add that you've not yet poured into the soup?
Three phrases, two that burn in my head from one of my favorite TV shows. Okay, so the truth is out there. I want to believe. Keep asking questions. Okay, any sci-fi fan will know exactly where those phrases came from.
And we would get copyright claimed if I had that music here, but I have some other music that will just pop in here.
Not gonna make a reference to that show. Yeah.
On. Thanks, both of you. I enjoyed this. We're gonna play this out, and we'll talk off stage in the green room, and I will say goodbye and goodwill, good night, good now, good hello, goodbye. Who are you? Where are you? How are you? This has been great. My name is Ryan Erickson. Riffing with Ryan. Come on, watch us wherever you want to watch us, however you want to watch us. And thank you for the precious gift of your time and attention.